Why are these logos upside down? Welcome to the Real Boardloft. I'm Trip Forman. We have Jon Pyzel with us here today, and we are talking about the Pyzel Shadow. Here in my hands, I have the stock Shadow. Jon, why don't you tell us a little bit about this board?
All right, the Shadow is, the Ghost was something working really well, and everybody was really liking that thing. It was a little bit more of a step-up board kind of than a short board. Mm-hmm. And then we made the other kind of the models in the Ghost family, like we made the Phantom and made the Gremlin, and that thing, both of those were really successful. People really like them. And then I just wanted to make something. It actually came about from Stab in the Dark.
Okay.
And they asked me to make a board for nobody, but a guy that weighed,
anonymous surfer.
Yeah, a guy that weighed 165, and it had to be a 5'10" and a half, and da-da-da-da. So I just went for it and kind of made something out of the blue. I'm like, they wanted something new, mm-hmm. And so I just took kind of the combo. I basically took the combo of a Phantom and a Ghost. I put more of a traditional shortboard outline on it. It still has the wide point. It's at center rather than like most guys will shift their wide point back a little bit, so there's more tail. This board's still more forward leaning, but it's not as forward like wide and thick.
Okay.
But there is more meat in here than most like traditional shortboards. And there's a little more width through the curve up here, and it's a little straighter through here, but I put a hip on it too to pull it in. And I took I used the Ghost rocker, but I added through the front like about 18 inches. I put a little more curve through that because the Ghost has like kind of a flatter entry rocker, and you want this board's designed more for like tighter pocket surfing, mm-hmm. in good surf, mm-hmm. but as a shortboard, a high performance shortboard. So I put a little more curve in the nose so it fits into a tighter pocket better. And then I added a little bit of concave through the center. So right like between your feet, there's more concave. There's like a straight spot here, right, which gives you a lot more speed. It's like a little speed spot. So I just dropped this concave in here, which straightened out the center line rocker, but I left the outline rocker the same as the Ghost rocker through the tail.
Right.
So it's got a really good flow to it, and it's more of like for a high performance board, it'll really carry its speed in weaker waves because you have a little added volume up front. You got that little sweet spot in between your feet.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it was just something I did it for Stab, and it turned out to be Mick Fanning, and he didn't like it, which. That's just Mick Fanning, I guess. But, but luckily, everybody else likes it. So I figured I made that one for Stab, sent it off, and then I figured like, hey, I better try it. I made this board, may as well check it out, you know? So I made myself one, and I rode it a little bit, and I really liked it. And then Koa Rothman, one of my team riders, lives like right next door to me. So one day he was just walking through my yard to go surf. Yep. And I'm like, hey, here, try this board, because we ride actually pretty similar boards. And I gave it to him, and he didn't want to give it back. So that was a good sign. You know, he's like, this thing's insane. So I started making them. I started making them just for different guys, not as like a model, but just kind of here, try this, try this. Yeah. And then when Jon last year, when he started, like when he's preparing to go on tour before he hurt himself, we were kind of going through boards. We usually try like different stuff before the year starts. We'll take those couple months that we have an opportunity to kind of like, okay, let's see where you're going to ride this year. He likes to have it planned out and like figure out exactly what he's going to be riding, where he's going to be going. And so what I usually do is just make a little small batch of boards and like, here, try this one of these, not a whole ton but just like one of each version of something. And
do you put like logos on those things, or are there any notes for him to?
No, I just write like
I'll
write something like I'll just write something on the bottom for me like well, okay, it's like sometimes I'll combine two models, or I'll just make something up. Like in this case, this was just I called it the Shadow, kind of because of Stab in the Dark. I was thinking dark shadow. Whatever.
Okay.
Anyways, that was the board he really gravitated to instantly. He was like, wow, this thing's really good. And I think part of that, I mean, I know for sure, was that it has that similar feeling to the Ghost, which he really likes. Yeah. And so it was like a Ghost, but just more suited for what we were thinking of. It's like smaller waves, but more like just standard performance kind of shortboard. And so he started riding it, and then from there it's all my team riders ride it. Jack Freestone loves it. Like these guys are all pretty happy with it, and like all the Groms I sponsor around the world are riding it in different places, and it works great in all kinds of surf, and that's the best part about it. Like it works good in California, it works good in Japan, it works good in Hawaii, it works good on the East Coast when there's waves. Like it's it's a great board for all kinds of surf.
Let me ask you a couple of questions about it. Like you talked about, like, you know, this board having a different feel than like a step up, you know?
Yeah.
So like when you're comparing this board to like a Ghost or a Phantom, what's the feeling difference as far as like when you're saying like, I mean, I think a lot of people know this, but I think a lot of people might not, you know, like, so if you're looking at like Ghost or Phantom versus this board, what is that feeling that's different?
Well, I feel like the biggest difference between like a Phantom, because the Phantom it's funny because all the waves kind of overlap that these boards are for. There's not like a specific wave like, oh, you should only ride this when it's this big.
Yeah.
They all kind of like overlap over each other for different situations. But this board just has less nose area than both those boards overall for its width. You know, like which makes it like a little more curvy and a little less like likely to like the Phantom has a pretty wide nose. If you're riding a smaller bully wave, that's kind of tricky sometimes.
Okay.
Whereas a Phantom in like a weaker, mushier wave might be a little bit better than this board at times,
right.
you know? And then having the hip just gives it like the hip into like a little bit more pulled in tail block, the squash. It just gives it like a little more of a pivot point and a little more like easy vertical surfing, whereas the other boards kind of have more of a rounded, like smoother kind of feel to them. Not that you can't surf smooth on this, but it just gives you like something to kind of
a pivot point.
Yeah, to like turn off of and get more vertical and easier. Okay. And then having less area up here kind of helps that too, you know. And then just having the wide point in center rather than a little forward, so it just there's kind of less in front of you.
More maneuver and a little bit, you know, a little bit more less drawn out, but more maneuver.
Yes. Okay. But at the same time, we still have like this thickness up here, which it's just not really traditional for most guys. Like most shortboard guys, you know, you're going to look at it's really scooped out in the nose.
Yeah.
And I just feel like that's kind of a waste of foam where there might be a little bit of extra swing weight when you have a tiny bit more foam here. But the benefit you get from paddling and everything else is really nice.
Yeah.
And then you also want to ride this like a little bit shorter. You know, it's not like you just go down a little bit than you would in maybe a normal shortboard.
Does having that foam, you know, here and having the wide point just a little bit further forward, does it make it more accessible than like a full to one end, you know, super high performance
totally.
shortboard?
I feel like you have all the benefits of a like high performance shortboard, but you get like a little plus. And what I feel like is this gives you a little bit of flow, you know. It keeps your flow going. It's like it keeps you from hitting these dead spots and like, oh, my board stopped in the water.
Right.
Having that under your front foot, and that's when you're typically like in a slow spot of a wave, you're driving off your front foot to kind of try to get some speed. And if your board's really sinking, if you're going slow, then you're stopping or you're slowing down. If you have a little bit of extra foam up there, I think it really helps to keep you just moving through sections like that, little dead spots.
Right. And then what's the ideal wave range for this board?
Anything like typically you can, I mean, waist high to pumping, whatever you want, you know, I think. And it feels.
So it's basically like a go-to shortboard.
Yeah, and it's like, I mean, a waist high wave, I'm not talking about waist high mushy crappy waves. I'm talking about like decent waves, you know? Yeah. And then into anything like, I mean, I've surfed this thing at like double overhead, Rocky Point or whatever. And like guys will typically ride it in anything like that too.
Let's talk about the Shadow 12. What's up with the Shadow 12?
Well, the Shadow 12 is, as you can see, we have upside down logos. Jon's thing. This is a replica of what Jon rides, and we just figured that people would be interested to see exactly like what he's on, and these are like his exact dimensions, everything. So it's a little narrower than a stock board for its width and I mean for its length and thickness. It's a little chunkier, but it's a little bit narrower. Okay. And yeah, we just did something that Jon rides, and it's pretty cool. It's fun. So
you talked about like Jon's exact dimensions. Like what
Absolutely.
What are like?
So this is
what are Jon's exact
18.88, which is 18 and 7/8.
Okay.
And 2.5 and 29.5 liters. His boards might vary a hair one way or the other with the literage, where I change a rail a little bit or do some little tiny thing. But essentially, this is like I could hand this to him and he'd like it.
And what are you know, all pro surfers look like 5'10", 175.
Yeah, he's a big kid.
So like when you look at a picture of them, even like the ones that are 5'4" and 120, they all look that size. So what are Jon's actual dimensions?
He's a freak.
Like height and weight.
He's like 6'1" at least, maybe 6'2". There's rumors of 6'2", but
okay, depending on the hair or what?
Yeah, he's funny. I don't know. Like Ross Williams will tell me he's 6'2" when he's ordering boards. Jon will tell me he's 6'1" when we're talking about boards. So I don't know.
And then weight?
But he weighs Typically, he'll be about 180 to 185.
Okay.
He can go as low as 175 and up to like 190, but he's usually in he's about 185.
Okay.
And but he's lanky and he's a super strong paddler, so he can go pretty small on boards. Like his boards, these are all shorter than him.
Yeah, yeah.
And volume-wise, he kind of goes on the low side. Like Jack Freestone's similar size to him, and Jack's about 5 pounds heavier, and Jack goes like 2 liters above him with boards. He likes a lot more board, at least a liter, if not 2.
Right,
so
right.
Just different. He likes a thinner board. He paddles like if you ever surf with him, he's a nightmare. He just like you're like paddling out next to him.
It's like paddling with Jeffrey.
So you paddle out and like you duck dive and you guys duck dive together and he's like oh, he's up there already. You're like, what happened right here?
Right,
like,
right.
So,
That's that part of being raised on the North Shore. He's like half human, half fish.
Yeah, it's funny. So.
Awesome, John. Well, hey, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate it. And if you have any more questions about the Pyzel Shadow, either the stock Shadow or the Shadow 12, would like to place an order, either in stock or custom, give us a call at the shop, 252-987-6000, or look us up online, realwatersports.com/surfing. Thanks for tuning in.